yet. So in some ways, it's kind of like Santa Claus just arrived, you know, when the cargo vehicle shows up. It's very exciting. But it's also very busy because immediately they want to start unpacking this stuff, especially the science, and start getting that science going. So they've already been pre-staging trash, awaiting this cargo vehicle. So they kind of stage their trash ready to swap places with the new cargo that's coming out. So as the Cygnus is attached to the International Space Station, they will unload the cargo and then start filling it with trash, and then eventually get a trash. So that's the way we take the trash out. So, and I'll say as I'm going along, if you have any questions, please feel free. But what I did, just to try to give you a little bit of what it's like to be a crew member, going to the space station, I brought along my home movies, if you will. Although I will tell you, this is from my last mission, which was STS-130, which was on the Space Shuttle Endeavour. So this experience is much different than the crews that are now on the International Space Station, as they all go up and back to the International Space Station nowadays on the Soyuz. STS-130 flew in February of 2010. Those of you in the mid-Atlantic area probably remember Snowmageddon.
Oh, yeah.
Right in the middle of Snowmageddon in the Winter Olympics, we were in space, and nobody seemed to even know it because we were 12 hours shifted, which meant that we were basically waking up at about 5 in the afternoon and going to bed at 5 p.m. So, but that was okay because we were busy. What we did was we installed Node 3 and the cupola on the International Space Station. And where I can tie the parallels to the Antares of the Cygnus is that we did take Node 3, which is bigger than the Cygnus, but we did grapple that with the robotic arm and take and berth that and then basically install it on the International Space Station, and then go inside and outfit it all. So I'll go ahead and show you the move. Now I will say though, during the video, I got to narrate pretty quick, so save your questions till after the video. We'll go ahead and take a look. All right, you recognize the NASA logo, but each crew designs their own crew patch. So once we got assigned, we did it in the shape of the cupola because that was the main goal of our mission, was to install Node 3 and the cupola. This was the crew. We had a crew of 6. As we were walking out, the crew of STS-130 heading out to the Space Shuttle Endeavour at the launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center. And here it is. This is about 4 in the morning, and just prior to the liftoff. This is that's me, the short one. That's the engines at 6 seconds prior, but watch the big shake. The big shake there is right at the solid rocket booster light off, which is right at liftoff. This is a view looking straight up. Remember, it's 4 in the morning. We are lighting that entire cloud deck. We lit up the whole East Coast at 4 in the morning. This is the roll. We're doing the roll program here, but once we punched through those clouds, it got real boring looking forward because all of a sudden it was just black. And so we cut that off. But this, seriously, lit up the whole East Coast of the U.S. at 4 in the morning as we're lifting off, heading on up. The first stage lasts about 2 minutes. And this camera is actually showing, it's on the solid rocket booster, one of these white ones here. After 2 minutes, those are burnt out and we don't need them anymore. Well, not quite burnt out, but we don't need them anymore. But things start smoothing out after that. It's pretty violent before we get rid of that. So now we're getting squished in our seats pretty good. About 3.5 Gs, this is me. But right at engine cutoff, immediately, you just kind of see us all just kind of lunge forward a little bit. We'd float right out of our seats if we weren't strapped in. This view is the bottom of the shuttle. This is the external tank. We don't need the tank anymore. It's done its job. It got us to orbit in 8.5 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and jettison that tank. And then there's the bottom of the shuttle going away. And that's not damage, it's just different aging of the thermal protection. Some of the newer stuff's darker. So as the tank goes down, this is as it's heading back towards the atmosphere. I just floated up out of my seat, grabbed the video camera, and got those pictures as it was heading down over the Alps. But if it breaks up and burns up for it, re-enters. Then it's time to get to work. Got out of our pressure suits and into just shirt sleeves and start working. This is what we looked like from the International Space Station as we were approaching. We had to go through all our procedures and all of our checklists as we get closer to the space station. That's just like the cops use. That is a radar laser, actually. And I was getting range and range rate with my handheld laser to the space station. On board the station, they were taking pictures of us. And this is what we look like. That's Node 3 in the cupola in our payload bay. And we're doing a big backflip so that they can inspect our underside there and make sure our thermal protection was not damaged during the liftoff. So we do a big backflip. We lose sight of the station during that flip, so it's pretty nice when you look and see the station rising right up over the tail, right where it needs to be. And this is the docking ring, right behind our aft windows. That's exactly where we attach to the space station. So thank goodness we didn't lose the space station when we did our flip. There she comes. And we back in it, go forward and actually back into the space station. This is looking up through that docking system. And you'll see a bit of a bump because we do that on purpose to make sure the initial latches connect, and then we pull down to the big latches, which actually takes quite a while. We equalize the pressure across the two spaces there. Once the pressure is equal across there, then we can float across over the hatch and see our comrades and fellow astronauts here on the space station. Jeff Williams actually just got back from another trip to the space station. So on board there were 6 crew members, and for us on the shuttle didn't feel small, but boy, that station felt big when we got up there. You know, it's about the size of about a 5-bedroom house. So immediately I got to work. I was operating a robotic arm. This is a cartoon of how I had to reach into the payload bay, grab Node 3 in the cupola, and bring it up around and install it on the port side of the International Space Station. This is the real picture. It goes very slow because, you know, it's not heavy, but it's in weightlessness, but it's a lot of mass. That's the last couple inches there. Once we had it installed, we went inside to totally outfit it. We took a lot of the experiments, or actually more so the crew habitation type things. We're taking up room in the US laboratory because there was no pad. This is our habitation module. We also took up a whole lot of cargo, and we totally outfitted the inside. So we were turning wrenches for about 10 days. While we're working inside, we looked out the window, and here's one of our crewmates outside. And 3, that was a weird feeling. All of a sudden, whoa, there's something out there. Yeah, oh yeah, I forgot. We got 2 guys outside making fluid data and electrical connections on the outside of the station. We went into the cupola. This is what the cupola looked like first. We didn't figure all of that, but eventually we got everything moved in, and we had an official ribbon cutting ceremony to officially open Node 3 and the cupola. We were able to move all of our life support tape systems out of the lab into Node 3 and make room for the science that we're now doing in the US lab. This is opening the shutters for the first time, and boy, that was neat. And I believe you've seen a lot of the pictures that have come from the cupola, which is really significant. Watch this. This is just looking back towards the aft part of the station, the Russian section. But then with one primary, the 7th window, the primary big one, and then there's 6 radio windows. You can see us in there. And watch us spin around. You actually have to physically turn your body around to get the full picture all the way around. By the way, this thin little blue line right there, that's our entire atmosphere. That's all that's protecting us. So we need to take care of that. It's really great because up until then, we just had windows that were flush with the outer wall line of the station, kind of like just looking out these type of windows here. But now with this big cupola, it's like a big bay window or almost like a turret kind of a thing that we can actually float in there and get all kinds of pictures. Well, of course, in between work, when we get a little bit of time, we have to play with the fun physics of microgravity. This is back on the space shuttle in the mid-deck, and yeah, we're playing with our food. It's just too bad. And eventually, somebody will eat it. You know, but one of the rules of eating in space, though, is chase the fastest movers first. So the ones that are moving away from you fastest, scoop that up and just gobble it down, and that's probably the best way to deal with it. We happen to be up there on Mardi Gras Day, so got a little Mardi Gras flag. I brought moon pies, but we got to share food. We are Russian and Japanese and the US all together having a big international lunch there. Sleeping in space, very easy, no pressure points. That would be vertical, somebody else upside down, somebody on the floor, and somebody on the ceiling. You really, the brain is so cool, it just adapts to it so quickly, no up and down. We want to stay in shape while we're in space to help minimize the bone and muscle mass loss that occurs just from the lack of perception of gravity. Unfortunately, after 10 days of being docked and getting Node 3 and cupola installed and fully outfitted, it was time to leave. This is us on docking. We are this part, and this is the station, and the shuttle would actually fly away from the station. Then we flew all the way around the station, not just to get pretty pictures, which they are. This is actually engineering data, because from inside the station, we can't really see all the way out to the ends of our solar arrays. So we use this data. Now watch this. This is sunrise real time. You'll see the shuttle right there, the silhouette of the shuttle. The sun comes up that fast, and the colors are even more brilliant than that shows. It's just really something. And of course, you know, it only takes us 90 minutes to go all the way around, so every 45 minutes we either have a sunrise or a sunset. This is us leaving, empty payload bay. So we delivered our payload, and it was time to leave. Again, I've got the handheld laser as we're just basically kind of spiraling out away from the station, taking lots of pictures as we go. Again, not only pretty pictures, but good engineering data. This is the size of a football field, US football field, as you span all the way across those solar arrays. The living part in the middle, again, like I said, is about the size of a pretty good sized 5-bedroom house. So you're really not right on top of each other. Well, now we had to go home. So we started off as a rocket. We're an orbiting kind of a laboratory. Now closing up the payload bay doors, we got to get back into our pressure suits. This protects us in case we lose pressurization during re-entry into the atmosphere. And turned into a big glider. Remember, we don't have engines now. We're just going to fire our orbital engines once. That peach color is plasma. And that's coming right across our windscreen as we're slamming back into the air molecules of the atmosphere. So we took off at night and we landed at night, 10 o'clock at night, and back at the Kennedy Space Center. This was our view, and this is what we looked like to everybody else as we came back in. Slowing down from 17,500 miles an hour all the way down to a full stop. And with the help of a little bit of a drag chute there, it helped slow us down. And it's not on fire, that's just the exhaust of the auxiliary power units that help us get hydraulic power. And not bad after all those miles that right on center line there, so we got a pretty good crew. And that was STS-130. So we got all right, so let me point out one of the differences. Obviously there's similarities with grabbing a cargo module and berthing it. We saw that one part where it was bringing them together. The big difference is, for me, it was a little bit easier in that the space shuttle was already docked to the space station. So this is one big spacecraft, if you will, and I was able to just reach in and grab Node 3 and the cupola that were in the payload bay of the space shuttle. I didn't have to go chase it, type of a thing, right? So it was actually fastened, and we actually grapple it while it's still fastened to the space shuttle. Once we have a good grapple, then we release the latches inside the space shuttle, and then you can pull it out slowly, you know, because it is a tight fit and everything. Now the difference with the crew, what they're going to have to do when Cygnus shows up, is Cygnus will go through its different cycles to catch up to the International Space Station, and we'll eventually get to a certain distance, and once everybody says everything's okay, then it goes what we call a free drift, and that means it turns off all of its thrusters, and it's truly just drifting. That's when the crew will be in the cupola, operating the robotic arm from the cupola, will then reach out and grapple the Cygnus cargo module. But it's not attached to anything. So if they make a mistake and they bump it in such a way, it can actually tumble away. So the crew is very well trained, and they practice this over and over, and they will do it well. I have no doubt. They're very experienced. Yes?
They have a certain time window that they have to grapple it or wait for another orbit, or how does that work?
Yeah, I don't have all that memorized right now, but there are certain conditions that they definitely have to meet, and we even have some really good displays that have been developed over the years with the software, so that they actually have the camera view, and they can zoom and tilt and do this, and then over that is an overlay. You saw when I was showing the landing shot, you saw the HUD type of picture on there, the overlay. They've got overlays on that, but there's actually quite a long list of flight rules having to do with the different conditions. Now the good news is, if something isn't quite right, we do have the ability, because the Cygnus cargo module has the ability with its own thrusters and its own systems to back away if it needs to. So if it needs to back away, readjust, and come back in, we've got the ability to do that. But as you can imagine, this does require coordination between mission control in Houston, the crew on board, and mission control at Dulles, Virginia, with the orbital ATK phase there. Good question.
Okay. What was the catalyst in your life that made you want to work for NASA? What is your educational background? And what would you say to young women around the world who may want to have this career?
Oh, great. Well, thanks for the question. I've been so very fortunate to have this opportunity to work for NASA and actually fly in space twice. I think really it wasn't a real specific motivation as much as when I was a young child and watching space exploration go on and folks going to the moon. I thought for sure by the time I was an adult, everybody would be flying in space. So I was kind of disappointed when that wasn't panning out, But I went out of high school right to the Naval Academy, commissioned in the Navy, flew in the Navy, flew oceanographic research, airborne science, and then was an instructor. Left the full-time Navy, stayed Navy Reserve, but went to work at the Kennedy Space Center as a space shuttle engineer. Picked up a master's degree in space systems from Florida Tech, and started applying to the program, and was very fortunate to be selected. And I mentioned I got to fly in space twice. The first time with a neuro lab, a space lab, life sciences, and then more recently on SDS-130 installing the 3D cupola. So one of the things I like to pass to students is there's no way I ever could have sat down and just planned that career out. Primarily because so many of the opportunities I've been able to take advantage of never even existed until right before I was able to raise my hand and say, I think I can do that. For instance, when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to go to an engineering school. I was applying to different schools, and I came across a Navy ROTC scholarship. I was applying for that. In the interview process, they asked me if I applied to the Naval Academy, and I truly said, what's that? I had no idea. And it had not been open to women. It was just at the point it was going co-ed. So I was in the second year group to even have women at the Naval Academy. While I was there, they opened up the Naval Flight Officer program to women, and I have a whole series of those throughout my entire career. To include, I was working at the Kennedy Space Center as a contractor to NASA as a space shuttle engineer when I applied to the astronaut program, and it turns out there had never been an employee from the Kennedy Space Center workforce become an astronaut. I was the first one there too. So again, I never sat out and plotted that out and planned and said, I'm going to be the first Kennedy Space Center employee to be an astronaut. No way. It's just these things happen. And I was able to take advantage of them because I had built a strong background, a strong experience base, a strong academic base, and just keep putting tools in that tool bag because you never know how you might employ those tools. So that's really my message to the students. Study hard, like Charlie Bolden said, but why? I mean, people say study hard all the time, but I like to give the reason why. The reason why is I cannot tell you the types of opportunities that are going to come your way. So be ready for those opportunities with more tools than the next guy, right? Or the right tools. Let's just say the right tools and the experiences so that you can jump on those opportunities. Thanks for the question. So back to the what's the crew going to do when this cargo module gets up there? Well, first of all, I haven't looked at their schedule to see if they're asleep, awake, when they are, but if they're up and about when the launch happens, they're going to be looking at it. As a matter of fact, a lot of times they get really good pictures of the launch. If it's clear, they can actually see the streak. It's kind of neat. Because obviously, as we're launching the Antares rocket, we want to put the most amount of cargo as we can on that rocket. And we don't want to waste any precious mass volume to unnecessary things. So what that means is we want to most efficiently catch up to the space station. So a lot of times, I haven't even looked. Have you guys looked for the pass? When's the pass? Right, there's usually, what'll usually happen, because we want to be really efficient, we don't want to burn too much fuel, usually right prior to the launch, there'll be a really nice pass. So if it's clear, that's pretty cool. It's like, there goes the station, it's like, there goes Antares, go catch them. So anyway, eventually we'll get the Cygnus cargo module up there, and the crew will see it from quite a distance out, and they'll be communicating again, like I said, with Mission Control in Houston and also Mission Control in Dulles. And once all the conditions are right, the crew will be in the cupola. They've got camera views of the cargo module, but they also, now with the cupola, have the ability to actually look out the window. If you were noticing earlier on in my video, we were looking at just computer screens and televisions. We didn't have an ability to look out the window and actually see what we were doing with the arm. We had to do that all from just these other images. So now we've got the combination. We've got the images as well as being able to physically float down to the cupola and look right out there as they're operating the arm. So that's really an added benefit for situational awareness. And they'll grab the Cygnus cargo module, and they will slowly bring it in and line it up with, actually they're going to nadir, right? They're going to nadir. They're going to put it on the bottom, if you will, of the International Space Station. And there's a whole series of procedures that they're going to go through. The first thing that they have are these little sensors, little spring-loaded kind of sensors that are what we call ready to latch, meaning that if you've got it all lined up, you're going to get all these sensors will go green, meaning, okay, you're in the right alignment and you're right up in the right place, close enough that we can now operate these mechanical latches and pull that in and latch it. Then we again have to equalize the pressure between the two spacecraft, if you will. And once all that's done, and we've got sensors inside the cargo module, and of course sensors on the space station side, once we get the go from everybody, we can open the hatch and they'll float in and go see what's at them. So, questions, yes?
They mentioned in the press conference last night that it's been a while since a Cygnus or a Dragon has been to the station. Do you have any perspective on, what the crew of the ISS would be thinking, I guess, when they're
going to be
finally
excited.
get one?
They're going to be excited, definitely. Yeah, we plan these things out actually several years down the road of what's going to go in which cargo module visiting vehicle as it's going up. So when we do have something that interrupts the schedule, the loss of the Dragon or whatever, something gets perturbated, if you will, we have to adjust and say, okay, what's the highest priority things we need to send up there? Maybe it's some parts for one of their spacewalking suits, their EMU, extravehicular mobility unit, or they've actually got a pretty good amount of food on board. But then again, maybe you never know. I haven't kept up. Sometimes in years past, let's just say, we've had some crews that started running low on coffee, and it was it was getting serious. Yes, it was getting very serious. Things like that. So I mean, they've got plenty of food that can really hold out for quite a long time, but it may not be their favorite food. So they are looking forward to what we're sending them. But sorry, I don't have all of it memorized. Okay. But in general, it is, no kidding. I mean, I wasn't there to receive a visiting vehicle, but I would imagine it's very much like, Christmas morning and see what Santa Claus brought you, kind of thing.
May I ask another question? Sure. I'm Canadian by birth. I was actually born in the same city as Commander Hatfield. But I just like to get some perspective on what it's like to drive the arm.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you, first of all.
Yeah,
Most
I
of-
had less to do with that.
Well, most of the folks, or if you don't know, on the space shuttle, our robotic arm was provided by the Canadians, and we call it Canada Arm. And we do our training up in Canada, even for the big, what we call the big arm. So one arm on the space shuttle and then another one on the space station. So what was kind of cool on my mission on STS-130, actually flew both, and actually had to hand off between the two, which was kind of neat.
Oh, that's cool.
But anyway, so it's really interesting. I mean, we spend a lot of time practicing flying that arm, and folks with aviation experience, piloting type of experience, do really well with it, because it's funny, because even watching it, a lot of times we'll start doing this, you know, like watching somebody else fly the arm. It's kind of like a pilot watching somebody else fly an airplane or something, because you actually are, it's all about that end effector where you actually grapple the object, and we're flying that, and we do have not only a pitch rolling knob, but again the translations as well, you know, up, down, left, right, forward, back kind of thing. So all three-dimensional, and of course all the different joints that we're watching on the arm. So there's a lot to it. It does take a while. I mean, this is not something you just train for a month. But it's a very well-made system that has given us tremendous capability. I mean, these robotic arms allowed us to construct the International Space Station and allow us to have great capability while we're inside, without always having to send a crew member out into the extravehicular activities. So, yes,
Yeah, general launch question. So when the Cygnus and other items fall back to Earth, they burn up in the atmosphere. What prevents that during launch or exiting the atmosphere?
pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
this is-
you still you know, generating a lot of heat, you know, type of a thing as you're going up. And that's why we have to have the thermal protection. But we got a lot of propulsion behind us, and it only takes us 8.5 minutes to get up into an orbit. We'll adjust that orbit when we get there. You know, maybe circularize it a little bit better, and then like with Cygnus, it'll start adjusting its orbit up a little bit more until it catches up with the space station. But the difference in when we're just like, let's say, once we fill the Cygnus module with trash, and we deorbit it in such a way where it kind of hits the atmosphere kind of shallow, meaning that it's going to skip into the atmosphere like that, and it's going to generate more heat and actually break up more. So it's sent in such a way to make it the worst case of surviving that entry.
So in the case of the shuttle itself that you're on, given that you don't have an engine on board, how do you control that trajectory?
What we do, what the shuttle had after, well, first of all, let's go back to the launch. As you see it sitting on the launch pad, it's got 3 internal main engines. Those are the ones that start about 6 seconds prior to the launch, and then the 2 white solid rocket boosters on the sides. So all of that, those engines are lit off 6 seconds prior, right at launch time, T0, the 2 solids are lit off. So we only need those for about 2 minutes. Those fall back to the ocean, and we actually did go and retrieve those. We had retrieval ships that would go and grab those, tow them back to shore, clean them all out, disassemble them, send them all the way back to Utah in segments, and then reuse those, which is pretty neat. But we're still going up with the main engines. Once we get to orbit at 8.5 minutes after liftoff, the main engines are cut off and never used again. But what we have are 44 little individual jets all over the shuttle, some in the front, some in the back side, and that's what allows it to change its attitude, you know, firing some combination of these jets, and then 2 orbital maneuvering system engines. But all those jets and those orbital maneuvering systems engines, those only work in the vacuum of space. They're not meant to work in the atmosphere or especially at sea level, you know, on the ground. So we do get the shuttle in the right position, exact position to target a landing. We would fire those engines in a different way if we were going to land in California or if we're going to land in Florida. So we commit. We have to commit to it. So we have to get a good weather forecast and commit to where we're going to land, because you can't change your mind after you fire those engines, because once those orbital maneuvering systems do what we call a deorbit burn, that's pretty much it. We do have a little bit of the little jets, a little bit on the way in, and just do these really gentle big S turns to start slowing down, start dissipating the speed, if you will. And a lot of people do ask me, you know, what is it like coming back in? It's actually very gentle, very slowly and gently. You feel like somebody's starting to slowly press down on your head, because if we haven't been feeling gravity for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, I don't remember this helmet being so heavy. So that by the time I landed, I think I was like totally over like this. You even like get loose in your seatbelt straps, because you think you're in there nice and tight, but then as gravity starts pulling you down in your seat, you realize you're not. So the whole way in, you're kind of doing this. And the other fun thing to do is to take a pen or a pencil, and when you first start, it's still floating, and after a while, it doesn't just drop like that. It just starts slowly kind of going down, and you can tell that you're starting to experience gravity again. So it's a pretty neat way to come back. A little different than the Soyuz. The Soyuz is a little more abrupt, let's say. Here's another question.
So what is your role today? What will you be doing when the rocket goes up? What will you be doing today?
Today, I'm going to find you. So I think I'm going to be, you know, basically available to talk with you guys or other, because, you know, I mentioned earlier in my career, I was a space shuttle engineer at the Kennedy Space Center. So my experience with NASA, other than watching on TV when I was a kid, did start at a launch site. So I'm particularly inclined to be pretty excited about launches in general. I know this is not human space flight, but this is very critical. You know, what we do here at the Wallops Flight Facility, this is directly supporting the human space flight and the exploration that's going on, the science that's going on, and also just advancement of the technology, you know, as we learn all along the way. I mean, believe me, we've been learning for the last 2 years as we've been trying to return the Antares and Cygnus to flight. We've learned a lot, and it's going to serve us well. This is the culmination of a lot of work from a pretty big team, and we're all pretty excited to see the launch and know that we got cargo headed to the crew. Here and then there's
we have a question from the NASA Social Periscope, and someone's asking if you had the opportunity, would you go to Mars?
Oh, absolutely. It's easy. It's kind of like, you know, when we were first talking about having an opportunity to have a U.S. astronaut fly for an entire year, I remember in the astronaut office they were thinking, oh, gee, I don't know if people will volunteer for this. So they just thought they would just ask one time. They said, well, the entire office was like, of course, you know, are you kidding? Of course, a whole year. It's not a problem. I mean, we're so well connected now. You know, possibly years ago, you know, if, or even just, let's say in the Navy, like my Navy background, you know, not that many decades ago, you know, Navy sailors would go off on ships and they'd say goodbye to their family, and maybe there might be a port they could get to at some point and get a letter, you know, or something, a postcard or something like that. They're so connected now. I mean, you know, we've got email and internet, and we've got even better, you know, with the space station. We're very well connected with our family and friends. We have opportunities to actually even have, it's not exactly Skype, but, you know, type of, you know, video kind of conferencing with our family and friends. And we've got voice over IP phone calls. We can call whoever we want. It's the best kind of phone though, because nobody can call you. You can call whoever you want, but nobody can call you, because that's just the way it's set up. But so we're well connected, and we don't feel that far away. And by the way, the view is always tremendous. If you ever get a second away from the work, just to look out the window, it's phenomenal. Thanks. Got one. Who has?
Did you go back into the Navy after leaving initially?
Yeah.
Were you the first combat, female combat?
Yeah. I was commissioned after graduating from the Naval Academy in 1981, and did my time, then went to work for NASA, but I was a reserve officer. So I got called back to duty a couple of times. As a matter of fact, I've only been I just got released from active duty again about 2 months ago. So, yeah, had a few kind of split personalities sometimes, you know. Sometimes I'm Navy, sometimes I'm NASA, a lot of times I'm both. But yeah, I did have an opportunity to fly in a combat mission role with VP-62 out of Jacksonville, Florida. So, yeah, I'm looking for. Okay, good. I'll get you out. Yeah.
Did any of the astronauts ever prank call places like on Earth? Like, do you deliver to orbit? No.
I don't know personally, but I know some of the stories. I'll tell you my personal one. I totally forgot to tell my sister that we had that capability. So, and we were 12-hour shifted. Like I said, we were about, you know, on the East Coast time, about 5 in the afternoon or so, we were going to sleep. So we were all getting ready to go to sleep, and somebody said, "Hey, the phone's available if anybody wants to make a call." I was like, yeah, let me go make a call real quick. So, you know, I'm getting on the thing, I'm calling my sister, and I'm like, well, this is going to be funny. And so I forgot to tell her, you know, and so I call her, and she picks up going, hello, you know, because this is now like 8 o'clock in the morning or something. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And I said, hey, it's Kay, and she goes, no, it's not. Kay's in space. Who is this? You know, kind of took a little while, you know, to convince her. I was like, yeah, sorry, I forgot to tell you we have this capability, and she, you know, because she was just, I think I just woke her up or something, you know. But that was kind of neat. But yeah, sometimes we enjoy sending videos back and forth as well. I know one time we had a group of us that we were getting together for something or other, and somebody just had been up there on the station for quite a while, and they took something, I don't know, an apple or something, and just said, hey, watch this, and they dropped it, you know, they said, look at that, that's gravity, you know. It's just funny little things like that. But yeah, I'm sure there's probably some stories out there about calls, but the biggest ones are when people call. I think even when we first got that capability set up, one of the crew members called directly to the front office of the astronaut office, and they couldn't get through to the head of the astronaut office, so they got the secretary put them on hold, okay, and went and, you know, said, you know, oh, so-and-so's on the line for you, and it was the same thing. No, he's not, he's in space, you know. It's like, it's got to be a crank call, and I think it took them like 3 or 4 calls to convince them that it really was them. But anyway, we do have good connectivity, which is important when you're going to spend that much time, you know, away from your family and friends, because and again, we're learning so much. We're learning the things that we're going to need to know to go further. And one of the things we do know is that keeping those connections is important, you know, so that we don't want to torture people, you know, make them work the whole time and not even be in touch with their family and friends. And of course, in our leisure time, we've got a pretty good library now on the International Space Station of movies and music. A lot of music, which is great. So just about any kind of music you want is already there in the library.